The screams of dying Zalaki warriors echoed across the crimson plains of Theta Prime, as another wave of Vorthon destroyers descended from the burning sky. Commander Zarath pressed her scaled back against the crumbling defense wall, her arms trembling as she clutched her plasma rifle. Around her, what remained of the 3rd Colonial Defense Force huddled in the ruins of their once mighty fortress. "Commander," gasped Lieutenant Kexel, his blue blood seeping through cracks in his chitinous armor. "The northern perimeter has fallen. The Vorthons have broken through our final line." Zarath closed her large amber eyes and felt the weight of inevitable defeat crushing down upon her. For 6 months, the Galactic Coalition had held this world against the relentless Vorthon Empire. For 6 months they had watched world after world burn under the enemy's merciless advance. And now, Theta Prime, the last fortress world between the Vorthons and the Coalition's core systems, was about to fall. The ground shook as massive Vorthon war machines stomped closer. Their mechanical roars drowned out even the sound of orbital bombardment. Zarath could see them through the smoke, towering metal behemoths with glowing red sensors, each one capable of leveling entire city blocks. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would break her heart. 3 cruisers, Commander. Maybe a dozen fighters." Kexil's voice was barely a whisper. "The rest of the fleet, they're gone." Zarath looked out at her soldiers, Zalaki, Thraxians, Cortani, and a dozen other species, all united in their desperate fight for survival, all about to die for a cause that seemed hopeless. The Vorthons had superior numbers, superior technology, and worst of all, they showed no mercy to prisoners. She opened her communicator with a shaking hand. "All units, this is Commander Zarath. Prepare for final defensive positions. We hold this line until—" A massive explosion cut off her words, as a Vorthon plasma cannon obliterated the eastern wall. Through the gap poured hundreds of enemy soldiers, tall, gray-skinned warriors in black armor, their faces hidden behind masks that glowed with cold blue light. "They're inside the perimeter," someone screamed. The Coalition forces opened fire, but their weapons seemed pathetically weak against the Vorthon advance. Plasma bolts that should have melted armor barely left scorch marks. The enemy moved with mechanical precision, cutting down anyone in their path. Zarath raised her rifle and fired at the nearest Vorthon. The shot hit him square in the chest, but he didn't even slow down. Instead, he turned his weapon toward her, and she saw death in his glowing eyes. But then something impossible happened. A streak of silver light cut through the air, and the Vorthons had simply disappeared. His body crumpled to the ground, black ichor pooling beneath him. "What in the void was that?" Kexel gasped. More silver streaks flashed across the battlefield. Vorthon soldiers who had seemed unstoppable just moments before, began falling. Not just falling, but being torn apart by weapons that screamed through the air faster than thought. And then Zarath heard something that made her blood freeze. Laughter. Not the terrified laughter of soldiers driven mad by war, but cold, calculating laughter that spoke of predators who had found their prey. Through the smoke and chaos, shapes began to emerge. At first, Zarath thought they might be some new type of Coalition reinforcement. But as they drew closer, she realized she had never seen their like before. They were smaller than most galactic species, barely reaching the chest of an average Zalaki. But they moved with a fluid grace that spoke of deadly efficiency. Their skin was pale, almost pink, and they had only 2 arms and 2 legs. Strange hair grew from the tops of their heads in various colors. But it was their eyes that truly frightened Zarath. They were small and varied in color, but they held a cold intelligence that she had never seen in any species. These beings looked at the Vorthon war machines not with fear, but with the calculating gaze of engineers examining a particularly interesting problem. One of them, a female with short brown hair and scars covering half her face, walked calmly through the battlefield. Vorthon soldiers fired at her with everything they had, but she seemed to dance between their shots. In her hands was a weapon unlike anything Zarath had ever seen, sleek, black, and surprisingly small. The female raised her weapon and fired. Once, the shot, if it could be called that, tore through 3 Vorthan soldiers and punched a hole clean through a war machine behind them. "Holy shit," the female said in a language Zareth had never heard. "These guys are tougher than them," Intel suggested. Another of the strange beings, this one male with yellow hair, dropped from the sky wearing some kind of powered armor. He landed directly on top of a Vorthan war machine and began tearing it apart with his bare hands. "Jenkins," the female called out, "stop playing with your food. We've got a schedule to keep." The male, Jenkins apparently, laughed and ripped the war machine's main gun from its housing. "Come on, Ramirez, when's the next time we get to fight something this fun?" Zareth watched in stunned silence as these newcomers carved through the Vorthan forces like a hot blade through ice. They moved with impossible coordination, as if they could read each other's thoughts. When one was about to be flanked, another would appear from nowhere to eliminate the threat. When they encountered obstacles too large for conventional weapons, they simply improvised. She saw one of them, a massive male with dark skin and arms like tree trunks, pick up a Vorthan plasma cannon and turn it on its former owners. Another used some kind of explosive device to collapse an entire building on top of an enemy formation. But what truly amazed Zareth was their complete lack of fear. The Vorthans were the most feared warriors in the galaxy. Their very appearance struck terror into the hearts of seasoned soldiers. But these strange beings looked at them the way a farmer might look at crop pests. Annoying, but ultimately manageable. "Who are they?" Kexel whispered, voicing the question that burned in every coalition soldier's mind. Before Zareth could answer, the female with the scarred face appeared beside their defensive position. Up close, she was even smaller than Zareth had thought, barely coming up to her shoulder. But those cold eyes held depths of experience that spoke of countless battles. "You're in charge here?" the female asked in perfect Galactic standard, though her accent was unlike anything Zareth had heard. Yes. "Commander Zareth, 3rd Colonial Defense Force." "And you are?" The female smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Captain Maria Ramirez, Human Expeditionary Force. Sorry we're late to the party." Human? Zareth had never heard the term before. "Yeah, we're new around here. Got your distress signal about 3 weeks ago. Took us a while to get here." Ramirez looked out at the battlefield where her soldiers were systematically destroying the Vorthan forces. "Hope you don't mind us crashing the party." A massive explosion lit up the sky as something, Zareth couldn't tell what, obliterated an entire squadron of Vorthan fighters. "How are you doing this?" Zareth asked. "The Vorthans are the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." Ramirez's smile widened. "Technology? Lady, we've been killing each other for 10,000 years. We've gotten pretty good at it." As if to emphasize her point, another human soldier, this one carrying a weapon that seemed to bend light around itself, vaporized a Vorthan command vehicle with a single shot. "Besides," Ramirez continued, "your intel was wrong about something important." "What's that?" The human captain's eyes glittered with cold amusement. "The Vorthans aren't the most advanced military force in the galaxy anymore." Chapter 2. The Art of War. The Vorthan retreat was unlike anything in their military history. For the first time in over 2 centuries of conquest, the Empire's forces were not making a tactical withdrawal. They were running. High Commander Vex Thol watched the tactical displays aboard his flagship with growing disbelief. Entire battalions were disappearing from his sensors. War machines that had crushed the defenses of 100 worlds were being reduced to scrap metal in minutes. "Report," he barked at his communications officer. "Sir, we're receiving fragmented transmissions from the surface. Something about new enemy forces. The descriptions don't make sense." "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, displaying grainy footage from a surviving Vorthan helmet cam. Vex Thol leaned forward, expecting to see some new coalition superweapon, or perhaps mercenaries from the Outer Rim. Instead, he watched a creature, no taller than a Vorthan child, single-handedly destroy a Devastator-class assault mech. The being moved with impossible speed, placing small explosives at precise points on the machine's hull. The resulting detonation didn't just destroy the mech. It turned it into a weapon that took out 3 more vehicles when it exploded. "Enhance Sector 7, Vexthul ordered. The image zoomed in on another of these strange warriors. This one was female, wielding a rifle that fired projectiles instead of energy. But these weren't the crude kinetic weapons used by primitive species. Each shot punched through Vorthon, armor like it was paper, and the rounds seemed to fragment inside their targets, causing devastating internal damage. "What species are these?" Vexthul asked his intelligence officer. "Unknown, sir. They don't match any profile in our databases. Their technology appears to be primitive in some ways, advanced in others." "Primitive?" Vexthul watched another section of footage where one of the creatures was using what appeared to be chemical explosives, ancient technology by Galactic standards. But the way they were employed showed a level of tactical sophistication that made his tactical computers look like toys. "Sir," his communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface. It's from the enemy." "Put it through." The screen switched to show a human face, Captain Ramirez, though Vexthul didn't know her name yet. She was standing in front of the burning wreckage of his ground command center, casually cleaning blood from a knife that looked like it had been forged in a primitive smithy. "This is Captain Maria Ramirez of the Human Expeditionary Force," she said, looking directly into the camera with those unsettling small eyes. "I'm assuming someone up there is in charge of this clusterfuck." Vexthul felt his mandibles click in anger. No one had spoken to a Vorthon High Commander with such disrespect in decades. "I am High Commander Vexthul of the Vorthon Empire. You will surrender immediately or face the full wrath of our orbital bombardment." Ramirez laughed. Actually laughed at his threat. "Orbital bombardment? Is that your plan? Because I should probably mention we've already taken out your targeting systems." As if on cue, alarms began blaring throughout Vexthul's ship. His tactical officer looked up from his console with wide eyes. "Sir, we're detecting multiple breaches in the hull. Something is cutting through our armor." "Impossible. Nothing can penetrate Vorthon battle steel without us detecting." An explosion rocked the bridge, and smoke began pouring from damaged systems. Through the haze, Vexthul saw something that defied all logic. A human was standing on his bridge, not floating in space, not wearing any kind of environmental suit, standing on the bridge of a ship in the middle of a battle, as if he had simply walked there from down the hall. The human was tall by their species standards, with dark skin and arms that bulged with muscle. He wore simple body armor that looked like it had been cobbled together from various sources. In his hands was a weapon that Vexthul's tactical systems couldn't even classify. "Afternoon," the human said pleasantly. "Name's Kowalski. I'm here, about your surrender." Vexthul's security detail immediately opened fire with their plasma rifles. The human moved. No, flowed, out of the path of their shots with casual grace. His weapon spoke once, and 3 Vorthon soldiers simply ceased to exist. "Now that's not very friendly," Kowalski said, his tone remaining conversational. "Captain Ramirez asked me to come up here and have a polite chat. I'd hate to have to report back that you folks weren't willing to listen to reason." "How did you get aboard my ship?" Vexthul demanded. Kowalski shrugged. "Climbed up the outside. Your hull plating's got decent handholds once you know where to look." "That's impossible. We're moving at combat velocity in a zero-atmosphere environment." "Yeah, that was a bit chilly," the human admitted. "Good thing I brought a coat." Vexthul looked at the creature's coat, a simple jacket that looked like it had been purchased at some primitive market. There was no way it could provide life, support in the vacuum of space. "Your environmental systems don't have any," Kowalski interrupted. "Well, nothing fancy anyway. We just hold our breath for a while." The High Commander felt his worldview cracking. The Vorthons had studied hundreds of species during their expansion. They understood the limitations of organic life forms. What this human was describing violated every law of biology he knew. "You're lying." Kowalski's pleasant expression didn't change, but somehow it became infinitely more threatening. "I don't lie about tactical capabilities, Commander. It's unprofessional." "What do you want?" "Simple. You pull your forces back from Coalition space and return to whatever hole you crawled out of. In exchange, we don't turn your entire fleet into scrap metal. Vexthul's anger overrode his growing fear. The Vorthan Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. We have conquered half the galaxy. Had, Kowalski corrected. Past tense. As of about 20 minutes ago, your expansion officially ended. We have 1,000 ships in this system alone. The human checked a device on his wrist that looked like it had been built in someone's garage. Make that 943. The boys are working fast today. Before Vexthul could ask what he meant, his tactical displays lit up with alarm signals. Ships throughout his fleet were reporting catastrophic system failures, hull breaches, and in some cases, complete loss of contact. How? He whispered. Trade secret, Kowalski said. Let's just say we've had a lot of practice at this sort of thing. Now, about that surrender. Vexthul looked at his command crew. These were the finest officers in the Vorthan military, veterans of 100 campaigns. But he could see the fear in their eyes. They had spent their careers crushing primitive species who fought with outdated weapons and desperate courage. They had never encountered anything like this. If I refuse? Kowalski's smile widened, showing teeth that looked designed for tearing flesh. Well then, Commander, I guess we'll just have to see how good Vorthan ships are at becoming artificial reefs. Down on the planet's surface, Captain Ramirez was having a similar conversation with the Vorthan ground commander. The enemy officer, a scarred veteran named Krexnil, knelt in the ruins of his command bunker, his armor cracked and his pride thoroughly shattered. Your forces fought well, Ramirez said, and she meant it. The Vorthans were professional soldiers, disciplined and brave. Under other circumstances, she might have respected them. We have never been defeated so completely, Krexnil said, his voice hollow with shock. How is this possible? Your weapons are primitive. Your numbers are small. By every tactical analysis, you should have been overwhelmed. Ramirez knelt down so she was at eye level with the alien commander. You want to know our secret? It's not our weapons, though they work just fine. It's not our technology, though we've got some neat tricks. Then what? We're not fighting for conquest, she said simply. We're not fighting for resources or territory or glory. We're fighting because someone asked for help, and where we come from, that means something. Krexnil looked around at the human soldiers securing the area. They moved with professional efficiency, but there was something else. A relaxed confidence that spoke of absolute certainty in their abilities. I have studied warfare for 2 centuries, he said. I have conquered 40 worlds, but I have never seen soldiers like yours. Different worlds breed different kinds of warriors, Ramirez replied. Where we come from, if you weren't good at fighting, you didn't survive long enough to have children. 10,000 years of that tends to produce a certain type of individual. She stood and offered him a hand up. After a moment's hesitation, he took it. Your surrender will be honored, she said. Your wounded will be treated. Your dead will be buried with respect. But your war is over. As if on cue, her communicator crackled to life. Ramirez, this is Kowalski. The fleet commander up here has decided to see reason. They're pulling back to the jump point. Good work. Any casualties? Rodriguez took a plasma bolt to the shoulder, but he's walking it off. Johnson's armor got a little crispy, but nothing Doc can't fix. 2 casualties. In a battle against the most feared military force in the galaxy, the humans had taken 2 casualties. Krexnil stared at her in disbelief. 2? Only 2? We're professionals, Ramirez said simply. This is what we do. Chapter 3. First Contact. Protocol 3 days after the Battle of Theta Prime, the Coalition Council convened an emergency session aboard the station New Geneva. Representatives from 47 species filled the vast amphitheater, their translators working overtime to convert the dozens of languages into something resembling coherent communication. Ambassador Thissaara of the Zalaki Confederation stood at the central podium, her forearms gesturing as she addressed the assembly. Honored delegates, we face an unprecedented situation. A new species has entered our galactic community, and their capabilities far exceed our current understanding. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The Vectani delegation, insectoid creatures whose compound eyes glittered with reflected light, chittered among themselves in alarm. The crystalline Shardani chimed their concern in harmonic frequencies that made several species' ears ache. These humans, Thaisara continued, have single-handedly ended the Vorthon expansion. Intelligence reports suggest they accomplished in 3 days what our combined fleets could not achieve in 6 months of warfare. Director Velkar of the Thraxian Republic raised one of his tentacles. Ambassador, what do we know about their origins? Our xenobiological databases contain no reference to this species. Very little, Thaisara admitted. They claim to come from a system they call Sul, located in what we've previously classified as an uninhabitable region of space. Their homeworld is apparently a death world, high gravity, extreme weather patterns, and an atmosphere toxic to most galactic species. A collective shudder ran through the assembly. Death worlds were rare and typically uninhabitable. The few species that had evolved on such planets tended to be either highly aggressive or extinct. However, Thaisara continued, their leader has agreed to address this council directly. The great doors of the amphitheater opened, and a small group of humans entered. They were led by a female who walked with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. This was Admiral Sarah Chen, though the council didn't know it yet, commander of the Human Expeditionary Force and veteran of more conflicts than she cared to remember. Behind her walked representatives of humanity's various military branches, Captain Ramirez looking somewhat uncomfortable in her dress uniform, Major Jackson, a tall black man whose presence seemed to fill the room, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, the expedition's chief scientist and diplomat. The humans took their positions in the center of the amphitheater, and several representatives unconsciously leaned back in their seats. Up close, the newcomers looked even more unsettling. They were small by galactic standards, but they moved with a predatory grace that spoke of a species evolved for violence. Honored delegates, Admiral Chen began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Stellar Navy. We come to you as representatives of the Terran Federation, seeking dialogue and understanding. Ambassador Thaisara consulted her notes. Admiral Chen, if I may ask, how did your species develop such advanced military capabilities while remaining unknown to the galactic community? Chen smiled, and several delegates found the expression disturbing. Human facial expressions didn't translate well to species who communicated through different means. We developed our capabilities out of necessity, Chen replied. Our world, our history, has been shaped by conflict. For most of our recorded civilization, we were divided into competing nations, ideologies, and tribal groups. We have fought wars over resources, territory, religion, and sometimes simply because we couldn't find a better way to resolve our differences. The Cortani representative, a peaceful species known for their philosophical approach to problem-solving, spoke, but surely as your civilization advanced, you moved beyond such primitive conflicts. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. Actually, we got better at them. More efficient, more destructive. By the time we achieved spaceflight, we had developed weapons capable of sterilizing our entire planet multiple times over. A horrified silence fell over the assembly. The Vorthons, Major Jackson said, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber, fight like they expect to win through superior technology and numbers. They've never encountered a species that treats warfare as an art form. Art form? The Vectani delegate chittered in alarm. Sun Tzu said that the supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting, Chen explained. But he also said that if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. She gestured to a holographic display that materialized above the assembly. It showed the recent battle on Theta Prime, but from a tactical perspective that revealed details the coalition had missed. The Vorthon forces were superior in every measurable way, Chen continued. Better armor, more powerful weapons, greater numbers. But they had one critical weakness. Which was? Thaisara asked. They had never lost, Captain Ramirez said simply. They expected their enemies to fight by the same rules they did. Stand-up battles between organized forces using conventional tactics. The display shifted to show human soldiers moving through the battlefield. They didn't advance in neat formations or establish clear battle lines. Instead, they flowed like water, adapting to each obstacle, turning the enemy's strengths against them. We've been fighting asymmetric warfare for millennia, Major Jackson explained. We've learned that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the biggest gun. It's the one willing to use tactics you never considered. But your technology, pressed the Shardani representative, their crystalline voice chiming with confusion. Your weapons appear primitive by our standards, yet they prove devastatingly effective. Dr. Vasquez smiled. Sometimes simple is better. A kinetic projectile doesn't rely on complex energy systems that can be disrupted. Chemical explosives don't require exotic materials or sophisticated manufacturing. And most importantly, they're technologies the enemy doesn't expect. The Vorthans designed their armor to deflect energy weapons, Chen added. They never considered that someone might still be using bullets. The assembly processed this information with growing unease. These humans had defeated the most feared military force in the galaxy, not through superior technology, but through superior understanding of warfare itself. "What are your intentions?" asked the Vectani delegate bluntly. "You have demonstrated capabilities that surpass any known species. What do you want from the galactic community?" Chen looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes, or optical sensors, or whatever each species used for vision, of as many delegates as she could. "We want what every species wants," she said. "Peace, prosperity, the chance to explore the universe, and learn from our neighbors. And if your neighbors prove hostile?" The Admiral's expression didn't change, but somehow her presence became more intimidating. "Then they'll discover why we're very good at solving problems." A long silence stretched through the chamber. Finally, Thisara spoke. "Admiral Chen, the Coalition would like to formally invite humanity to join our alliance. Your military capabilities would be invaluable in maintaining peace throughout this region of the galaxy." "We appreciate the offer," Chen replied. "But we should probably mention something about our approach to peacekeeping." "Yes?" "We don't really do peacekeeping," Captain Ramirez said. "We do war ending." "What's the difference?" asked the Cortani representative. "Peacekeeping tries to manage conflicts and reduce violence," Dr. Vasquez explained. "War ending eliminates the source of the conflict entirely. Sometimes that means negotiation and diplomacy," Chen added. "Sometimes it means making it very clear to all parties that continued aggression will have consequences they won't enjoy. And sometimes," Major Jackson said quietly, "it means removing hostile forces from the equation permanently." The assembly absorbed this with varying degrees of alarm and admiration. "There is another matter," Thisara said carefully. "Our intelligence suggests that humanity possesses technologies and capabilities beyond what you've demonstrated. Some of our analysts believe you've been restraining yourselves." Chen and her team exchanged glances. "That's correct," the Admiral said finally. "What you witnessed on Theta Prime represents approximately 10% of our conventional military capability." 10%? The Shardani delegate's harmonic voice cracked with disbelief. "We brought one expeditionary force," Chen explained. "Roughly 5,000 personnel. The Terran Federation maintains standing military forces of approximately 50 million active personnel, with another 200 million in reserves." The numbers hit the assembly like a physical blow. Most species maintained military forces, numbering in the thousands, perhaps tens of thousands for the largest empires. "And that's just our regular military," Major Jackson added helpfully. "That doesn't count special operations forces, intelligence services, or irregular units, or our non-conventional capabilities," Dr. Vasquez said quietly. "Non-conventional?" Thisara asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "We'd prefer not to discuss those unless absolutely necessary," Chen said. "Let's just say that if we ever need to escalate beyond conventional warfare, the results would be decisive." The assembly sat in stunned silence, trying to process the implications. They had been worried about the Vorthan Empire's military might. Now they were face to face with a species that treated interstellar war as a routine problem-solving exercise. "We understand your concern," Chen said, her voice gentler. "But please remember, we're here because you asked for help. We came to your aid not because we wanted conquest or resources, but because it was the right thing to do." "And now?" asked the Vectani delegate. "Now we'd like to get to know our new neighbors," Dr. Vasquez said. "We're explorers and scientists as much as we are soldiers. The universe is a big place and we've only just started learning about what's out there." "What about the Vorthons?" Thaisara asked. "They've withdrawn to their core systems, but our intelligence suggests they're regrouping." Captain Ramirez shrugged. "If they want to stay in their own territory and leave everyone else alone, that's fine with us. If they decide to start expanding again." She didn't need to finish the sentence. "We should also mention," Chen added, "that we've received communications from several other species, groups that have apparently been watching this region of space with interest. Our arrival seems to have attracted attention from distant neighbors." "What kind of attention?" Thaisara asked with growing alarm. "The kind that suggests the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place," Chen replied. "But that's a discussion for another day." As the humans filed out of the amphitheater, the delegates sat in contemplative silence. They had sought protection from one threat, only to discover that their saviors might represent an even greater change to the galactic order. But perhaps, some of them thought, change wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Chapter 4. The Reckoning 6. Months after first contact, the galaxy had settled into an uneasy new equilibrium. The Vorthans remained in their core systems, apparently content to focus on internal matters rather than risk another encounter with human forces. The coalition had expanded its borders, incorporating several new member species who sought the protection that humanity's presence offered. But not everyone was pleased with the new order. In the distant Andromeda cluster, beings of immense power and ancient malice stirred from their long slumber. The Kethvari had ruled a galactic empire when the Milky Way was young. They had withdrawn from active conquest millennia ago, content to watch lesser species rise and fall like mayflies. The arrival of humanity had changed that calculation. Fleetmaster Zondar studied the intelligence reports with growing interest. His species resembled no other known life form, tall and graceful, with metallic skin that shifted color with their moods and thoughts. They possessed technology that bordered on the magical, weapons that could unmake matter at the subatomic level, and ships that traveled not through space, but between dimensions. "These humans," he mused to his tactical advisor, "they present an interesting problem." "Indeed, Fleetmaster. Our analysis suggests they represent the first genuine threat to Kethvari supremacy in over 10,000 years." Zondar's skin shifted to a deep crimson, the color of amusement. "Threat? I think you misunderstand the situation, Velthar. They represent an opportunity." "How so?" "For too long, we have ruled over an empire of weaklings and cowards. The Vorthans were the strongest military force in this region, and they crumbled at the first sign of real opposition. But these humans..." His skin shifted to a brilliant gold, the color of anticipation. "They might actually provide us with entertainment." On Earth, Admiral Chen stood in the war room of Luna Station, humanity's primary military command center. Before her stretched a holographic map of the galaxy, marked with intelligence reports, fleet positions, and areas of concern. "Ma'am," her aide said, "we're receiving disturbing reports from our deep space reconnaissance units." "Show me." The galactic map shifted, focusing on a region of space that had been marked as uninhabited. New contacts appeared, massive signatures moving at impossible speeds. "Who are they?" "Unknown, Admiral. But their technology appears to be significantly more advanced than anything we've encountered. Our scouts barely escaped detection, and what they saw..." He paused, gathering himself. "Ma'am, their smallest ships are the size of our battle cruisers." Chen studied the data with professional interest. "Numbers?" "Conservative estimate, Several thousand ships, possibly tens of thousands. And they're heading toward Coalition space? Yes, ma'am. ETA is approximately 3 weeks. Chen nodded slowly. Send a message to all commands. Operation Prometheus is now active, and get me a secure channel to the Coalition Council. An hour later, she was addressing the same assembly that had welcomed humanity 6 months earlier. But this time, the atmosphere was very different. Honored delegates, Chen began. We have a problem. The holographic display showed the approaching fleet, ships that dwarfed even the largest Coalition vessels, moving in formations that suggested military discipline dating back millennia. Who are they? Thaisara asked, though her voice suggested she already dreaded the answer. We call them the Kethvari, Dr. Vasquez explained. Our xenoarchaeology teams have found references to them in ruins across a dozen worlds. They appear to be one of the galaxy's elder species, possibly the oldest surviving spacefaring civilization. What do they want? Unknown, Chen admitted. They haven't responded to any communication attempts, but given their approach vector and formation structure, we have to assume hostile intent. The assembly erupted in panic. The Vorthons had been terrifying enough, but at least they were comprehensible. This new threat was beyond their experience. Can they be negotiated with? Asked the Cortani representative. We're certainly going to try, Chen replied. But we need to prepare for the possibility that diplomacy won't work. What can we do against such forces? Thaisara asked. If your assessment is correct, they possess technology centuries beyond our own. Chen's expression hardened. Then we'll have to be creative. On the bridge of the Kethvari flagship Eternal Dominion, Fleet Master Zondar reviewed the tactical situation with satisfaction. His advanced scouts had provided detailed intelligence on the target systems, and what they found was disappointing. The Coalition forces were scattered across dozens of worlds, using outdated technology and predictable tactics. The humans, supposedly the great military threat, had only a handful of ships in the region, most of them small scout vessels. Fleet Master, his communications officer, reported, "We're receiving a transmission from the local inhabitants." Put it through. Admiral Chen's image appeared on the main screen. Even transmitted across the vast distances of space, her presence was commanding. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Federation, speaking for the Galactic Coalition. You have entered our space without permission and ignored all attempts at communication. State your intentions. Zondar's skin shifted to deep purple, the color of contempt. I am Fleetmaster Zondar of the Kethvari Empire. Your species has attracted our attention through your aggressive expansion. We have come to evaluate whether you are worthy of continued existence. Chen's expression didn't change. And if we're not, then we will cleanse this region of your influence and return it to proper order. I see. Chen paused as if considering her words carefully. Fleetmaster, I'm going to offer you the same choice we gave the Vorthons. Withdraw to your own territory, and we'll consider this a misunderstanding. Continue on your current course, and we'll be forced to stop you. Zondar's advisors began chittering among themselves in their harmonic language, their amusement rippling through the bridge. The idea that these primitive creatures could threaten the Kethvari was beyond comprehension. Admiral, Zondar said, his skin now shifting to bright silver, the color of genuine mirth. Your confidence is admirable but misplaced. We have ruled the stars since before your species learned to make fire. Our technology is beyond your understanding. Your largest fleet would be nothing more than an amusing distraction. Maybe, Chen acknowledged. But you should know something about humans, Fleetmaster. We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure the other guy can never threaten anyone again. The transmission ended, leaving Zondar staring at a blank screen. Something in the human's voice had been unsettling. Not fear or desperation, but a cold certainty that spoke of absolute resolve. Fleetmaster, his tactical advisor said, perhaps we should reconsider. The human's defeat of the Vorthons suggests capabilities beyond. The Vorthons were weak, Zondar cut him off. They had grown soft through easy conquests. We are Kethvari. We have faced extinction and survived. We have conquered dimensions beyond counting. These humans will learn the difference between defeating inferiors and facing true power. But deep in his mind, a small voice whispered that perhaps he was making a mistake. 3 days later, the Kethavari fleet entered Coalition space. They expected to find scattered defenses and desperate resistance. Instead, they found empty systems. "Where are they?" Zondar demanded. "Long-range sensors show Coalition forces have withdrawn to the inner systems," his sensor operator reported. "The humans appear to have consolidated their fleet around their primary base." "How many ships?" "Approximately 50 vessels, fleet." "Master." Zondar's skin flickered between colors as he processed this information. 50 ships against his fleet of 10,000. Either the humans were suicidally brave or... "It's a trap," his tactical advisor said quietly. "Obviously. But what kind of trap could threaten us? Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their ships are slower than ours. Even if they possess some secret weapon, the numerical disadvantage is overwhelming." But as the Kethavari fleet advanced deeper into Coalition space, strange things began to happen. Ships would report minor system malfunctions, nothing serious, just small glitches that reduced efficiency by a few percentage points. Sensor readings became slightly less accurate. Communication systems experienced brief delays. Individually, these problems were insignificant. Collectively, they began to add up. "Fleetmaster," his chief engineer reported, "we're detecting some kind of interference. It's subtle, but it's affecting all our systems. Source? Unknown. It appears to be some kind of quantum-level disruption, but the pattern doesn't match any known technology." Zondar frowned. The Kethavari had encountered many forms of electronic warfare over the millennia, but nothing like this. It was as if their ships were being infected by some kind of technological virus that worked at the level of fundamental physics. "Maintain course," he ordered. "We'll deal with the humans and their tricks soon enough." On Luna Station, Admiral Chen watched the approaching fleet with grim satisfaction. Operation Prometheus was proceeding exactly as planned. "Status report," she ordered. "Nanite deployment is at 60% saturation," her technical officer reported. "Their fleet is showing signs of system degradation across all major platforms." "Excellent. What about Phase 2? "The Alcubierre mines are in position. We're ready to activate on your command." Chen nodded. Humanity had learned a great deal from their brief contact with galactic civilization. They had also learned that sometimes the most effective weapons were the ones your enemy never saw coming. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we're receiving priority transmissions from all sector commands. The trap is set." "Good. Send the signal to all units. It's time to show these ancient bullies what humans do to anyone who threatens our friends." The Battle of Seven Suns began not with the clash of mighty fleets but with a whisper. Across the Kethavari formation, ships began reporting cascade failures in their primary systems. The nanites, microscopic machines designed by humanity's best military engineers, had been quietly rewriting the fundamental operating codes of alien technology. "What's happening?" Zondar demanded as his flagship shuddered under the strain of failing systems. "Sir, our quantum cores are destabilizing. The nanites have somehow interfaced with our dimensional drives." Before Zondar could respond, space itself seemed to twist around his fleet. The Alcubierre mines, devices that created localized space-time distortions, activated simultaneously. Ships that had been moving in neat formations suddenly found themselves scattered across light years of space, their formations broken, their coordination shattered. And then the humans struck. They didn't come in mighty battleships or overwhelming numbers. Instead, they came in small, fast ships that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. These vessels, no larger than Kethavari shuttles, carried weapons that defied every law of physics the ancient species understood. Captain Ramirez, now commanding the assault ship Righteous Fury, led the first wave. Her ship was a marvel of human engineering, small enough to avoid most targeting systems, fast enough to outrun anything that could catch it, and armed with weapons that could punch through shields designed to deflect Starship-class armaments. "This is Ramirez to all units," she broadcast on the human tactical frequency. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Her ship dove between two massive Kethvari dreadnoughts, weapons blazing. The rounds she fired weren't energy bolts or plasma charges, but specialized penetrators that carried their own miniature fusion warheads. They punched through shields that could deflect Nova-class energies and detonated inside the enemy ship's hulls. The result was catastrophic. Ancient vessels that had survived the fall of empires began breaking apart from within, their crews struggling to understand how their invincible defenses had been breached. "Impossible!" Zondar screamed as his tactical display showed ship after ship going dark. "Our shields are impenetrable. Our armor is composed of materials that don't exist in this universe." "Sir," his science officer said, his voice shaking, "the human weapons aren't trying to overpower our defenses. They're ignoring them entirely." "What?" "The projectiles appear to be phasing through our shields at the quantum level, then rematerializing inside our hulls. It's as if they're treating our defenses as mere suggestions." Zondar felt his worldview crumbling. The Kethavari had ruled the galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never encountered an enemy that simply refused to play by the established rules of warfare. "All ships concentrate fire on the human vessels," he ordered. "Destroy them with everything we have." But the humans weren't where his sensors said they should be. They appeared to be using some kind of stealth technology that bent space around their ships, making them nearly impossible to target. When the Kethavari did manage to hit them, the damage was often minimal. The human ship seemed to be built with redundant systems and armor that absorbed incredible amounts of punishment. More importantly, for every human ship they destroyed, they lost 10 of their own. The exchange rate was unsustainable. "Fleet Master," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving another transmission from the human admiral." Chen's image appeared on screen again, but this time she was clearly on the bridge of a warship in the middle of battle. Behind her, the crew worked with the calm efficiency of people who had done this many times before. "Fleet Master Zondar," she said, "I'm going to make you the same offer I made the Vorthans. Surrender now, and your people will be treated with honor. Continue fighting, and we'll be forced to escalate." "Escalate?" Zondar's skin had turned black, the color of rage. "You dare threaten us? We are Kethvari. We have weapons that can shatter planets." "So do we," Chen replied calmly. "The difference is we're willing to use them." As if to emphasize her point, space around the Kethvari fleet suddenly erupted in brilliant light. A new type of human vessel, one that dwarfed even their largest ships, had appeared seemingly from nowhere. It was built like a fortress, bristling with weapons that hurt to look at directly. "What is that?" Zondar whispered. "That," Chen said, "is what we call a planet killer. It's armed with weaponized black hole generators, antimatter torpedoes, and something we call a reality anchor that prevents dimensional travel within a 50 light-year radius." Zondar felt his heart stop beating. A reality anchor. Such technology was theoretically possible, but no species had ever actually built one. The power requirements alone should have made it impossible. "You're bluffing," he said, but his skin was now pale blue, the color of fear. "Target the third moon of Kexalar," Chen ordered someone off-screen. A beam of impossible energy lanced out from the human fortress ship. It struck the moon, a barren rock the size of Earth's Luna, and simply erased it. Not destroyed or vaporized, but removed from existence as if it had never been. "That was a demonstration," Chen said. "The next shot will be aimed at your flagship." Zondar looked around his bridge at his crew. These were warriors who had faced the death of stars without flinching. But now they stared at their instruments, in horror, trying to comprehend weapons that operated beyond the laws of physics they understood. "How?" he asked quietly. "We've had a long time to think about warfare," Chen replied. "And we've learned that the best way to win a fight is to make sure it ends so decisively that no one ever wants to fight you again. You would commit genocide?" "If necessary." Chen's voice carried no emotion, no anger, just the cold certainty of someone stating a fact. "But we'd prefer not to. Your people can withdraw to your own territory and live in peace. Or you can continue this fight and discover just how ruthless humans can be, When we decide someone needs to be stopped permanently, Zondar closed his eyes and felt the weight of 10,000 years of Kethavari supremacy crashing down around him. They had ruled through fear and superior technology, but they had never encountered a species that simply didn't care about the established order. He began, then stopped. Everything he had believed about the galaxy, about his people's place in it, had been shattered in a matter of hours. "Fleet Master," his tactical advisor whispered, "we've lost 70% of our ships. Our remaining vessels are scattered and damaged. We have no choice." Zondar opened his eyes and looked at Chen's image on the screen. The human admiral watched him with patient attention, waiting for his decision. "I surrender," he said finally. "In the name of the Kethavari Empire, I surrender." Chen nodded. "Wise choice. Please have your ships power down their weapons and prepare to be escorted to a neutral system. Your wounded will be treated and your survivors will be repatriated to your territory. And then you go home and tell your people that humanity is not to be trifled with. If the Kethavari want to remain in their distant territories and live in peace, they're welcome to do so. But if you ever threaten Coalition space again," she didn't need to finish the threat. As the battle ended and Kethavari ships began surrendering, word spread throughout the galaxy with the speed of quantum communication. The humans had done more than defeat another invasion. They had faced the galaxy's oldest empire and won so decisively that the Kethavari would likely never recover from the humiliation. On worlds across Coalition space, beings of a dozen different species looked up at the stars and felt a new sense of security. The humans were not just powerful, they were absolutely, utterly committed to protecting their allies. But in the depths of space, other ancient powers stirred. The galaxy was changing, and not everyone approved of the new order. The age of human dominance had begun, and the universe would never be the same. Epilogue. New Horizons. 1 year after the Battle of Seven Suns, the galaxy had settled into its new reality. The Kethavari had withdrawn to their distant territories, apparently content to remain in isolation rather than risk another encounter with human forces. The Vorthans had formally signed a non-aggression pact with the Coalition, their expansionist dreams permanently curtailed. Ambassador Sarah Chen, she had retired from military service to pursue diplomacy, stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the new headquarters of the Galactic Coalition. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of species moving through space lanes that had once been battlefields. "Quite a view," said a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Captain Ramirez, now promoted to Admiral, approaching with 2 cups of coffee, a human beverage that had become surprisingly popular among several alien species. "Maria," Chen said with a smile, accepting the coffee. "How are the patrol reports?" "Quiet. Almost boring." Ramirez joined her at the window. "The Vorthans are keeping to their territories. The Kethavari haven't been seen in 3 months, and most of the smaller aggressive species have decided they'd rather join the Coalition than fight it. That's good news." "It is. But I have to ask, did we do the right thing?" Chen raised an eyebrow. "Having second thoughts about defending innocent species from conquest?" "Not about that. About the methods we used. The galaxy is afraid of us, Sarah. Really afraid. Is that the kind of peace we wanted to create?" Chen sipped her coffee and considered the question. It was one that had kept her awake many nights since the Kethavari surrender. "You know what I told the council when they asked me the same question?" she said finally. "What?" "I said that there are 2 kinds of peace in the universe. There's the peace that comes from everyone being too weak to fight, and there's the peace that comes from everyone being too afraid to start a war. The first kind is fragile. It breaks the moment someone stronger comes along. The second kind lasts longer," Ramirez finished. "Exactly. The galaxy spent centuries living under the threat of conquest. The Vorthans, the Kethavari, and a dozen other aggressive species kept everyone else in line through fear. We just changed who they're afraid of. But what happens when the next threat comes along? Something even worse than the Kethavari?" Chen's expression hardened. Then we do what humans have always done when faced with an existential threat. We adapt, we improvise, we overcome, and if necessary, we introduce our enemies to concepts they never imagined. Before Ramirez could respond, Chen's communicator chimed. Admiral Chen, please report to the communications center, Priority Alpha transmission. The two women exchanged glances. Priority Alpha meant communication from Earth, and those were rare enough to be significant. They made their way through Unity Station's corridors, past bustling marketplaces where humans traded with alien merchants, past research centers where human and alien scientists collaborated on projects that would have been impossible just a year ago. The communications center was a secure facility deep in the station's core. Director Martinez, a former intelligence officer, met them at the entrance. Ma'am, he said, we've received a transmission from Deep Space Reconnaissance Unit 7. They've made contact with, well, you need to see this for yourself. The main screen activated to show Captain Torres, a weathered veteran who commanded one of humanity's most advanced scout ships. Behind him, the bridge of his vessel was alive with activity. Admiral Chen, Torres said, we've encountered something unprecedented. We're approximately 50,000 light-years from Coalition space exploring the galactic rim. We've found other humans. Chen felt her blood freeze. Other humans? That's impossible. Earth was humanity's only colony world. When we left Sol system, ma'am, I thought the same thing. But these people are definitely human. They speak archaic English, they have the same biological markers, and they claim to be descendants of a generation ship that left Earth over 1,000 years ago. A generation ship? We have no records of any such vessel. No, ma'am. But that's not the strangest part. These humans, they've developed in a very different direction from us. The screen shifted to show footage from Torres's ship. Chen saw humans, but they were unlike any she had ever encountered. They were taller, more graceful, and their eyes held a depth of knowledge that spoke of centuries of accumulated wisdom. They call themselves the Eternal Wanderers, Torres continued. They've been traveling the galaxy for a millennium, studying ancient ruins, cataloging dead civilizations, and learning secrets that predate known history. What do they want? To meet their cousins, ma'am. They've been monitoring our activities in this region and, well, they have information we need to hear. A new figure appeared on screen. A woman who was clearly human but moved with an ethereal grace that was almost alien. Her voice when she spoke carried harmonics that suggested she had been modified in ways Chen couldn't imagine. Greetings, children of Earth, the woman said. I am Keeper Lyra of the Eternal Wanderers. We have traveled far to bring you warning. Warning? Chen asked. The galaxy is older and more dangerous than you know. The species you have encountered, the Vorthons, the Kethvari, they are recent arrivals. There are powers in the darkness, between the stars that have slept since the universe was young. Your aggressive expansion has begun to wake them. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of powers? The kind that made the Kethvari look like children playing with toys. The kind that could end not just your civilization, but all life. In this galaxy. The screen flickered, and Torres reappeared. Ma'am, the Wanderers have archives dating back millions of years. They've seen civilizations rise and fall, and they claim that humanity, both branches of it, may be the galaxy's only hope against what's coming. What do they propose? A meeting. Representatives from Earth, the Coalition, and the Wanderers. They want to share their knowledge and coordinate our response to threats we can't even imagine yet. Chen looked at Ramirez, who shrugged. Well, Admiral, you said we'd adapt when the next threat came along. I did, didn't I? Chen turned back to the screen. Captain Torres, inform the Wanderers that we accept their invitation, and send a priority message to Earth Command. Tell them we need to convene the Defense Council. Yes, ma'am. The transmission ended, leaving Chen staring at a blank screen. In the space of a few minutes, the galaxy had become infinitely larger and more dangerous than she had imagined. Sarah, Ramirez said quietly, are you ever going to tell me what humanity's ultimate contingency plan is? The one you mentioned to the Kethvari? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Have you ever heard of Project Lazarus? No. Good, let's hope you never have to. As the two women left the communication center, neither of them noticed the small figure watching from the shadows. Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped into the light, her face grave with concern. She had been monitoring deep space communications for months, tracking signals that didn't match any known species. The Eternal Wanderers weren't the only ones who had noticed humanity's rise to power. Something was stirring in the dark spaces between galaxies. Something ancient and hungry and very, very angry. The age of human dominance had begun, but it was about to face its greatest test, and Dr. Vasquez feared that even humanity's legendary adaptability might not be enough for what was coming. In the depths of space, beyond the reach of any telescope or sensor, massive shapes began to move. They had slept for eons, waiting for the galaxy to produce a species worthy of their attention. Humanity had finally gotten their notice. The real war was about to begin. End of defeat was certain until ruthless human soldiers arrived.